Today's reading is by the inimitable Jane Austen from her masterpiece, Emma. It is always incomprehensible to a man that a woman should ever refuse an offer of marriage. A man always imagines a woman to be ready for anybody who asks her.
I'm going to disagree with that. Because I know that there was a couple women I went out with that said, I would never marry a guy like you. Oh well. But I have made 2 successful marriage proposals. The second one being much more successful than the first. I've been married now for 21 years. And I met my wife here in Fresno when I came here to go to college in 1989. I came here after spending 10 years in the community college system. And came down here and to Fresno State. And my very first class that I took was Shakespeare at 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Starting in January, one of those cold, foggy Januaries that we haven't had for a long time, where the fog just stays for like 10 days straight and never leaves. And I would go to this class. And I remember, so there was this woman in this class, and she would sit a couple seats behind me, usually a row over. And she had brown hair, and it had like a reddish wash to it that didn't quite look natural, but she was attractive. I mean, she was cute, she was intelligent, I could tell when she spoke. And I would not say that she was an angry feminist, but angrily feministic at the time. And so I was a little scared to talk to her, honestly, and so I just didn't for the whole semester. And to be fair, I looked pretty much like a poorly dressed guy that had just rolled out of a shipyard and was sitting in his first university class, just kind of glowering at everybody suspiciously. And so, yeah, she didn't talk to me either. But I do still remember the very first thing I ever said in class. So it was probably the second or third weekend, and the professor's going on about symbolism in Shakespeare. And I think we were studying Hamlet. He's like, oh, Yorick's skull, it symbolizes, the skull symbolizes the inevitability of death. And I raised my hand, and he looks at me. And I said, aren't we reading a little much into this? Which went on for about like a fart in church. And he just looked at me and said, no, this is what we're doing here. And I thought, bullshit. Because I thought, yeah, the reason why Shakespeare put the skull in there wasn't for some symbolic reason. It's because if you dig somebody up and talk to them, if you pull out their foot, 1, that's not going to look very good. 2, the foot's just going to fall apart, right? And you've got this great iconic image of the skull on the hand talking to the person, and it's really just a bit. Shakespeare just like, oh, that's a bit. Yeah, that's a great comedic bit to put in there, and that's why he did it. And that's kind of how I felt, was like, all this criticism stuff seems to be like trying to add your own creativity. Well, let's create new stuff. So that was how I felt in the very first class I took. On the way to my bachelor's degree, and I still felt the same way on my very last class of my bachelor's degree in English, which is what I got. And I continued to antagonize all my professors, though I learned that it's much better to do it during office hours than it was to do it in the classroom. So that's more or less what I did to get my degree. And then, I don't even know why this happened, but I ended up sticking around for a master's degree, also in English, where I continued to antagonize my professors. But I had a little different plan. Rather than studying stuff like Shakespeare and things like that, I thought, I'm going to study poetry. Not because there's any less symbolism or any of that kind of nonsense that I really don't like, but it's because the books are they're so much smaller. And the margins are like that. And there's so many fewer words on the page, so if you got to read all this stuff and try to figure it out, that's the way to go. So that was really how I got through college, and in my very first class in my master's program, which was Contemporary American Women Poets, not a bad class, who was sitting next to me but the woman from my Shakespeare class? And I was like, hey, I remember you. And she's like, yeah, I remember you too. Even though it had been a couple of years, it's like, oh, well, we can finally talk to each other, I guess, whatever that was, we've gotten past. So yeah, we've been together now 27 years. Yeah. So people say, well, why did you study English? And it's like, because if you don't like literature, and it's like, yeah, well, I wanted to learn to be a writer. I wanted to write. And now that it's been many, many years since I graduated from college, I realized what I write songs. So I've written probably 50, 60 songs, 25 or 30 that I play now with my band, and I actually play out and make money at. But if you have a lot of college student loans, I don't recommend that as a way to pay them off. It's kind of hard out of paying off your student loans with crumpled up $1 bills and $5 bills that you're pulling out of a little jar. And the other thing I write is I write Rogue Festival shows. So this is my 16th Rogue Festival show. And I realized, every year from October to February, the end of February, I spend all this time working on these shows. So also, not going to pay off a lot of student loans, but still well worth doing, and thank you guys for coming. I learned how to write, and now I write Rogue Festival shows. So when I got together with this group, this year I really wanted to try to work collaboratively. So last year, Rachel and Karis and I started Art or Evidence with my wife, who had something else to do this year, so we brought Heather in, and what we really wanted to do was come together and work collaboratively, really from just scratch, from nothing. So we had no ideas, and we just wanted to come together and say, as creative people, let's challenge ourselves to create a show starting like October 20th, and boom, we've got this date, we're gonna make it. So that's what we're gonna do. And so we all came to my house, and I made everybody a cup of tea, because that's what I do with my band every week. I practice with my band, Boxcar Figaro, and we get together from about October to March, we drink tea. And so I made everybody a cup of tea, and I said, well, I have an idea for how we can start this process. Because I've done this a lot, so I kind of know how it goes. And I said, I think I've got an idea that's really going to work for everybody. I said, so I want to read to you from a book. And it's a book called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, a very famous book on writing and creativity. And I said, but first, before I read from this, what I want to read to you guys, I have a confession to make. And the confession is that I've never actually read this book. Because my love of reading was squeezed out of me in college, and I just don't read books anymore. So I've never read this book, but I still think it's worth starting here, because I've read The Dust Jacket. Because, Heather's got a bachelor's degree in English. Karis has a minor in English. Rachel has a degree, she's college educated, very smart, has a degree in something. So I said, yeah, so they kind of looked at me like, I'm not sure about this guy. But I said, so I want to read this book. I want to read for you from The Dust Jacket. And I haven't really read the whole Dust Jacket. I've read the inside cover. And to be really honest, I've only read the first paragraph on the inside cover. That is absolutely true. This entire story is sadly true. But I think it's such a great piece of writing that I can't imagine what more I could learn than this part I want to read to you right now. 30 years ago, my older brother, who was 10 years old at the time, was trying to get a report on birds written that he'd had 3 months to write. It was due the next day. We were out at our family cabin in Bolinas, and he was at the kitchen table close to tears, surrounded by binder paper and pencils and unopened books on birds, immobilized by the hugeness of the task ahead. And then my father sat down beside him put his arm around my brother's shoulder and said, "Bird by bird, buddy. Just take it bird by bird." So that was where we started. And the first bird I threw out to the group was, Heather is the president of the Central California chapter of the Jane Austen Society, right?
Yeah.
And I've got this guitar thing going on. And I thought, oh, Jane Austen City Limits, right? That was faster than these guys because yeah, these guys looked at me like, I don't get the joke. And I had to explain to them, well, Austen City Limits was, yeah, you don't get it either. You're going to know why here in a second. So Austen City Limits is a TV show about music that's been on since 1976. And it's on public broadcasting, which comes out over the airwaves into people's houses. And nobody under 35 has ever watched it. So they had no idea what the joke of Jane Austen City Limits. But Heather said, well, that's a good joke. So I thought, well, let's do that. So I thought, well, I said, well, how about we do a song about Jane Austen? I'm like, okay. So I was really excited. So I started working on a song that night. I thought, oh yeah, Jane Austen song. Jane Austen was a very prolific writer for the short amount of time that she lived. She wrote 6 novels. She wrote Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, Persuasion, Mansfield Park, and then there's a 6th one that I don't ever remember. Northanger, thank you.
Didn't even have to.
Thank you very much. So I thought, oh, well, if I'm going to write a song about Jane Austen, I'm certainly not going to read any Jane Austen books. Because I'm just not going to do that. So I thought, well, there's Wikipedia. So I just looked up Jane Austen on Wikipedia. And I got a bunch of titles. And I thought, oh, I'll just throw those into a song. Yeah, that'll work. So this is my song, Pride and Prejudice. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the second bird that flew up in our show was Karis. Said what she really wanted to do this year in the show was she wanted to play marimba. And I thought, wow, that's really ambitious. Because I think those are hard to play. And then she went out and bought a marimba, and I thought, that is really ambitious, but she's serious. So I thought, man, I've never had a chance to play in a band with a marimba. So, and I got this song, why don't you play marimba with me? And I said, it's a country song, so I just need you to play some country marimba. And she looked at me like, kind of like the Austen City Limits thing, you know? Like, country marimba, what's that? And I thought about it, and I thought through all the country songs I've ever listened to, and I thought, I don't think I've ever heard a marimba in a country song. So I said, well, all right. I guess you're just going to have to invent country marimba. So that, my friends, is Country Marimba by Karis Calvert.